Rachel, 38 years old, and I never imagined my own family could turn on me so brutally. It was Christmas dinner in Lincoln, Nebraska, the table buzzing with holiday chatter. I'd spent hours preparing, my hands still aching from work I'd poured into keeping this family afloat. Then my dad's voice sliced through the noise. "You are just a burden. We want to live without you. Get out right now." The words hit like a slap. My mom sat there giggling, swirling her wine glass, not saying a word. My sister stared at her plate, avoiding my eyes. The guests froze, forks hovering. My chest burned, but I didn't let a tear fall. I stood, grabbed my coat, and walked out into the biting Nebraska night, my steps steady despite the chaos in my heart. I could hear whispers behind me, but I didn't look back. I'd given everything, my dreams, my savings for them, and this was their thanks. Have you ever been betrayed by the ones you love most? Share your story in the comments, tell me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to see how I turn the tables. The next morning, I pulled into Mark's driveway in Lincoln, my suitcase rattling in the trunk. Mark, my boyfriend, opened the door before I could knock, his eyes soft with concern. "You okay?" he asked, pulling me into a hug. I nodded, but my throat tightened. I hadn't slept, the sting of my dad's words still raw. Inside, his small living room felt like a sanctuary far from that Christmas dinner table. I set my laptop on his kitchen counter, hands trembling, and logged into my bank account. I needed to know where I stood after walking away. The screen loaded and my heart sank. The joint account I shared with my sister, meant for family bills, was down thousands of dollars. I scrolled through the transactions, my pulse racing. There it was, multiple transfers, each labeled Rachel's boutique project. My sister had funneled over $10,000 into some failed fashion venture without a word to me. I managed that account, but I'd been too busy paying the family's electric, water, and mortgage bills, nearly $2,000 a month, to check it closely. She'd counted on that. I leaned back, my breath catching. Years ago, I'd poured my heart into my graphic design studio, building it from nothing. Clients loved my work. I was booked months out. But when my dad's medical bills piled up and my sister's freelance gigs dried up, I sold the studio to keep the family afloat. I paid for everything, their heat, their water, even the roof over their heads, while they treated me like an ATM. No thank you, no acknowledgement, just demands. Last night proved it, my dad calling me a burden, my mom giggling over her wine, my sister silent. I'd sacrificed my dream for them, and they didn't care. I opened another tab, pulling up the auto payment portal for the family's utilities. My finger hovered over the screen. I thought of my dad's voice, sharp and cold. "We want to live without you." Fine, I thought. Let's see how they manage. I clicked into the electric company's site first. With one tap, I canceled the monthly payment tied to my card. The water bill was next canceled. Then the mortgage, the one I'd been covering since my dad's surgery left them strapped. I hit delete on the auto draft. My hands steady now. A weight lifted, like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for years. Mark watched me from across the counter, stirring his coffee. "You sure about this?" he asked, his voice calm but searching. I met his gaze, my jaw tight. "They made their choice," I said. "Now I'm making mine." I closed the laptop, the screen going dark. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of control. My family thought they could push me out and keep cashing my checks. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Mark set his mug down, leaning closer. "You don't have to go through this alone," he said. I nodded, grateful, but my mind was already racing. I'd given up my studio, my savings, my life for them. No more. I pulled out my phone, checking job boards for freelance design gigs. I needed to rebuild, and I wasn't waiting for their apologies. My sister's betrayal stung deepest. She'd taken my money, my trust, and said nothing while our dad threw me out. I wasn't just cutting their bills, I was cutting them out of my future. I stood pacing Mark's kitchen, my resolve hardening. The family's house, their lights, their water, it was all on them now. I'd spent years carrying their weight, believing it was my duty. But duty doesn't mean being used. I glanced at my phone again, a new email popping up, a potential client, a small business needing a logo. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I looked at Mark, his steady presence grounding me. I'm done being their safety net, I said, my voice firm. He nodded, a small smile breaking through. I turned back to my laptop, ready to take the next step. 2 days later, I sat on Mark's couch, my mind still reeling. Mark sat beside me, his hand resting on mine. "Talk to me," he said, his voice steady. I let it spill, the betrayal, the years of paying their bills, the way my sister stayed silent while I was humiliated. My voice cracked, but I kept going, the weight of it all pouring out. "I gave up everything for them," I said, "and they called me a burden." Mark leaned forward, his eyes serious. "You know, I had a friend back in college," he started. His parents leaned on him for money, used his savings for their debts, then blamed him when things went south. He kept giving, thinking it'd earn their respect. It didn't. He only got his life back when he stopped. He paused, looking at me. "You deserve better, Anna. Set your boundaries now, or they'll keep taking." His words hit hard, like a door swinging open. I'd been trapped in their cycle too long, always the one to fix things, to pay up, to sacrifice. I grabbed my laptop, my resolve sharpening. The auto-payment portal was still open from when I'd canceled the main bills. There were smaller ones left, internet, phone, even my dad's car insurance, all tied to my account. I logged in, my fingers moving fast. One by one, I shut them down, click, click, click. Each cancellation felt like cutting a chain. The phone bill was last. I hesitated, then hit confirm. No going back. They wanted to live without me. They could start now. My phone buzzed, my dad's number flashing. I braced myself and answered. "Anna, what's going on?" He barked, his voice sharp. "The lights are out, the water's off." "What did you do?" I gripped the phone. My heart pounding, but my voice steady. "You said I was a burden, Dad. You told me to get out. I'm just giving you what you wanted." He sputtered. "You're overreacting. Turn it all back on now." Overreacting. The word stung, but I didn't flinch. "You chose this," I said, my tone cold. "You don't get to demand my help anymore." I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking, but my mind clear. Mark nodded from across the room, a quiet pride in his eyes. I opened my laptop again, this time to job boards. My graphic design studio was gone, but I still had my skills. I scrolled through listings, logos, branding, website mock-ups. A local coffee shop needed a menu redesign. A startup wanted a full brand package. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, a flicker of excitement cutting through the anger. I drafted an email to the coffee shop attaching my portfolio. It was small, but it was mine. I wasn't just cutting ties with my family. I was building something new. Mark brought me a coffee, setting it on the table. "You're stronger than they'll ever know," he said. I managed a small smile, the first in days. My sister's betrayal, my dad's demands, they couldn't touch me here. I sent another email, this time to the startup, my confidence growing. A week later, my phone lit up with my sister's name. I was in kitchen sipping coffee, trying to focus on a logo sketch for a new client. I hesitated, then answered. Rachel's voice came through, sharp and accusing. "You're so selfish, Anna," she spat. "You cut us off without a word. Do you know what you're doing to Mom and Dad?" I clenched my jaw. Her words sparking anger. Selfish. After everything I'd given Rachel, I said, my voice low. "I know about the money. $10,000 siphoned off for your failed fashion project. You thought I wouldn't notice." Silence hung on the line. Then she scoffed. "You're making this about me?" Typical. I could hear her typing, probably already spinning her story. "You took my trust," I said. "You don't get to lecture me." I hung up, my pulse hammering. 2 days later, my mom showed up at Mark's door. Mark let her in, his face tense but polite. Susan stood in the living room, her hands twisting together. Anna, we're struggling, she pleaded, her voice shaky. The bills are piling up, the house payment's late. Please turn the services back on. Her eyes were red, but I saw no regret, no apology for that night. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Mom, you laughed when Dad told me to get out. I said, my tone even, but firm. You let him call me a burden. Rachel used my money and you said nothing. This is on her, not me. Susan's face crumpled. We're family, she whispered. Family doesn't abandon each other. I shook my head. You abandoned me first, I said. I'm done carrying you all. She left, her shoulders slumped, but I felt no guilt. I'd spent years bailing them out. No more. That evening, my phone buzzed with notifications. I opened Facebook and there it was. Rachel's post pinned at the top of her profile. Some people turn their backs on family when they need them most, it read. Anna Mitchell thinks she's better than us, leaving her parents and sister to struggle. Shame on her. My stomach twisted, not from hurt but from fury. She'd painted me as the villain, twisting the truth to save face. I scrolled through the comments, neighbors, old friends, even distant relatives chiming in. How could she do that? One wrote. Ungrateful, another said. My cousin Brian had shared the post, adding, heard they're barely getting by now. The post was spreading like wildfire in Lincoln's tight-knit community, each share chipping away at my family's reputation. Mark sat beside me, his hand on my shoulder. They're lashing out because they're desperate, he said. I nodded, but the sting of Rachel's words lingered. I could have posted my side, how I'd paid their bills, how Rachel stole from me, how they threw me out, but I didn't. Let them talk. I wasn't the one hiding the truth. I refreshed the page, watching the comments pile up. A local business owner I'd worked with messaged me privately. Is this true? I thought you were better than that. I didn't reply. Lincoln was small and gossip traveled fast. My family's name was sinking and they had no one to blame but themselves. I turned off my phone, focusing on my laptop instead. Another client email had come in, a boutique needing a website redesign. I drafted a response, my fingers steady. Rachel could scream on social media all she wanted. I wasn't backing down. My family thought they could guilt me into returning, but their words no longer held power. I glanced at Mark, who was scrolling through his phone, frowning at the post. You don't need their approval, he said, looking up. You're building something better. I nodded, a quiet strength settling in. The community might judge me now, but I'd show them who I was through my actions, not their lies. 3 weeks later, my family's world was crumbling. Word reached me through a mutual friend their house in Lincoln had gone dark. No electricity, no running water. A foreclosure notice was taped to their front door, the bank's red ink screaming unpaid debts. My sister's so-called boutique project had collapsed entirely, costing her a major design contract with a local retailer. She couldn't pay the rent on her office space, and they'd locked her out. My dad, desperate, had taken up odd repair jobs, fixing leaky faucets, patching drywall, but the pay was barely enough for groceries, let alone saving their home. I heard it all secondhand, and each detail tightened a knot in my chest. Not guilt, but a dull ache for the parents I'd once idolized. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Rachel's name flashed first. Anna, you've ruined us, she shouted when I picked up. No power, no water, how could you? Her voice dripped with blame, as if I'd forced her to drain my account. You took $10,000 for your project. I shot back, my tone sharp. You don't get to play victim now. She hung up, her silence louder than her words. Then my dad called, his voice hoarse. David, I said, cutting him off before he could start. You told me to get out. I'm not your bank anymore. He tried again, softer. We're losing everything. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. You lost me first, I said, and ended the call. Each rejection felt like a brick in a wall I was building around myself, solid but heavy. I turned my focus to my work, the one thing I could control. My laptop glowed with new emails, clients needing logos, flyers, website mock-ups. The coffee shop I'd pitched to in Lincoln had signed on, thrilled with my menu design. A startup sent a contract for a full branding package, their feedback brimming with praise. I worked from Mark's dining table, sketching ideas, tweaking color palettes. Every completed project fueled a fire in me, a sense of strength I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just surviving. I was rebuilding piece by piece the life I'd let my family take away. Another call came. Rachel again. "Please, Anna," she begged, her voice breaking. "We're drowning. Just pay the electric bill." I gripped my phone, my resolve unwavering. "You made your choices, Rachel," I said. "Live with them." I hung up my hand, steady but my heart twisting. I thought of my mom, picturing her in that dark house, her silence at that dinner table still stinging. I loved them once deeply, but love didn't mean letting them use me. I pushed the thought aside, opening a new design file. A local bakery needed a logo, and I dove in, sketching curves and flourishes, losing myself in the work. The news of my family's struggles spread through Lincoln. A neighbor texted me, asking if the rumors were true. "Lights off, house at risk." I didn't respond. My dad's repair jobs weren't enough, and Rachel's reputation as a designer was tanking after her contract fell through. They were paying the price for their choices, just as I'd paid for mine all those years, pouring my savings into their lives. I felt a pang thinking of my parents' faces, their pride unraveling. But I'd given enough. I sent an invoice to the startup, my bank account growing with every job. Each dollar was mine, earned by my hands, not theirs. I leaned back in my chair, staring at my latest design. The bakery logo was bold, vibrant, exactly what they'd asked for. I smiled, a quiet pride settling in. My family's chaos was theirs to fix now. I was done being their crutch. I saved my work, sent the file, and checked my email for new leads. A small museum in Lincoln wanted a brochure, another opportunity, another step forward. I wasn't looking back. 2 months later, I heard my family had sold their house. They'd moved into a cramped rental apartment on the outskirts of Lincoln, a far cry from the home I'd kept afloat for years. The news came through a former neighbor, her voice hushed over the phone. My dad and my sister were barely speaking to anyone, she said, and my mom was keeping to herself. I set my phone down, a flicker of sadness passing through me, but it didn't linger. I'd carried their burdens long enough. That evening, my phone chimed with a voicemail from my mom. I played it, her voice soft and halting. "Anna, I'm sorry for what happened at Christmas," Susan said. "We shouldn't have treated you that way. I hope you're okay." No mention of fixing things, no acknowledgement of the years I'd sacrificed, just words, empty and late. I deleted the message without replying, my heart steady. I'd spent too long waiting for apologies that changed nothing. My focus was elsewhere now, on myself, on my future. I'd been pouring my energy into rebuilding my career. After weeks of freelance gigs, I took a leap and rented a small office space downtown, a corner unit with enough room for a desk and my design tools. I named it Mitchell Design Studio, a nod to the dream I'd lost years ago. The first day I walked in, keys jangling in my hand, I felt a rush of pride. This was mine, no one could take it away. I set up my laptop, hung a few sample prints on the walls, and got to work. A local bookstore had hired me for a branding overhaul, logo, signage, even a website. Their owner emailed excited about my initial drafts. Another client, a Lincoln gym, wanted posters and social media graphics. My inbox was buzzing, each project a step towards something bigger. Mark was there every step of the way. He helped me move my equipment into the office, lugging monitors and boxes up the stairs. "This place is perfect," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. I smiled, grateful for his unwavering support. We'd grown closer these past months, our bond deepening through late-night talks and shared meals. One evening, as we grabbed coffee at a cafe near my new office, he reached for my hand. "You're unstoppable," he said, his eyes warm. I squeezed his hand back, feeling a spark of joy I hadn't known in years. With Mark, I wasn't just rebuilding my career, I was building a life. I spent my days sketching, tweaking designs, and meeting clients. The bookstore owner stopped by, thrilled with the new logo's bold lines. The gym sent a glowing review booking me for another project. My bank account was growing not from family demands but from my own work. I thought briefly of my sister, her failed boutique a distant memory, and my dad struggling in that small apartment. Their choices had led them there, not mine. I pushed the thought away, focusing on a new email, a museum wanting a series of exhibit posters. I dove in sketching concepts, my mind alive with ideas. Mark joined me at the office one afternoon, bringing takeout from my favorite taco place. We sat on the floor laughing over spilled salsa, planning a weekend hike. "You've come so far," he said, his voice soft but proud. I nodded, a warmth spreading through me. My studio was small, but it was a start. My clients were local, but they trusted me. And Mark, he was more than a boyfriend now. He was my partner in every sense. I looked around my office, the walls bare but full of possibility. This was my new beginning, and I was ready for it. 6 months later, I was fully on my own. My family had faded into silence, no more calls, no more pleas. I'd heard through the grapevine that my cousin Brian was still stirring the pot, whispering to anyone who'd listen about the Mitchells' downfall. Their name carried a shadow now in Lincoln, a reminder of their choices. I didn't care to correct the rumors. My focus was my life, my studio, my future. I'd cut every tie to my past, and for the first time, I felt free. My days were filled with work at Mitchell Design Studio. Clients kept coming, a cafe needed a new sign, a nonprofit wanted a campaign logo, a school asked for event flyers. My office buzzed with energy, my sketches piling up on the desk. I'd built something real, something mine, from the ashes of the life I'd lost. Every contract signed, every invoice paid was a victory. Lincoln's community was starting to know my name, not as the daughter of a struggling family, but as a designer who delivered. One evening, Mark took me to our favorite park by the sunken gardens. The air was warm, the sky streaked with pink. He was quieter than usual, his hand tight around mine. We stopped by the pond, the water glinting under the fading light. He turned to me, his eyes steady. "Anna," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "You've rebuilt everything on your own terms. I want to build a life with you." He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring. My breath caught, not from surprise, but from the weight of his words. I nodded, tears prickling my eyes. "Yes," I whispered. He slipped the ring on my finger, and we stood there, wrapped in each other, the world fading away. We planned a small wedding, just us and a few close friends in that same park. On the day I wore a white sundress, nothing fancy, but it felt right. Mark stood under a canopy of oaks, his smile brighter than the June sun. We exchanged vows, promising to support each other, to build a life of trust. The ceremony was short, the reception just a picnic with music and laughter. I looked around at the faces, friends who'd cheered my journey, who saw me for who I was. My family wasn't there, and I didn't miss them. This was my new beginning, surrounded by people who valued me. Later, as we danced under string lights, I thought about the road I'd traveled. I'd given everything to a family who took me for granted, who called me a burden when I stopped giving. Walking away was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it taught me something vital: you have to set boundaries to protect yourself. I learned to stand up, to say no, to choose people who lift you up instead of dragging you down. Mark was that person for me, steady and kind, never asking me to be less than I was. My studio, my clients, my life, they were proof I could rebuild without their weight. I want to leave you with this: family doesn't mean obligation. It's okay to walk away from those who hurt you, to build a life with people who see your worth. I did it, and I'm stronger for it. If you've faced family conflict, how did you find your way through? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you reclaimed your life.